Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 352 or 352. So you know that feeling when you get to the end of a video game and like the sky is orange and there's smoke in the air and it feels like it's the end? Yeah, so Toronto was hit with wildfire smoke, like a lot of North America last week, and it was genuinely terrifying looking outside. Like I had to take a photo from inside my apartment because whenever I took it outside my apartment, my phone camera would go like, that can't be right, and would autocorrect, it would color correct it to the right, blue skies, beautiful day. But if I took it from inside, you could actually see the orange glow coming off, the buildings. Anyway,
basically the Fallout New Vegas filter is how I thought of it.
That is amazing. That is exactly what it was. Thankfully, it seems like things are back to normal here, except that instead of getting 35-degree days, we're getting 18-degree days in the middle of July, and I am baffled and confused. But maybe my panelists can help sort me out. Joining us today are Ben.
Hello.
And Aleks.
Hello.
Did either of you get some interesting wildfire-related weather?
I mean, I'm around Toronto, so yeah.
Well, yeah, you were, obviously.
I saw the exact same thing as you did. And that Wednesday morning waking up and I guess the sun was out, but everything was just orange instead of either cloudy or clear sky was super, super weird.
I know. Yeah, it was a creepy, creepy day. And we didn't leave the house for 2 days because it's we don't want to go out there. It's orange.
Did it make it over to you at all, Ben?
No, I'm too far south, I think, for it to really make it this far. I did when I used to live in upstate New York. I think this was in 2022. You guys had a lot of wildfires up there that year, and we did get a lot of that then. But I'm way too far from Canada for it to affect our air quality. And we have bad air quality because the XAI facilities are here pumping out using gas turbines and pumping all that in the air. So
you getting that weird hum from those data centers I've been hearing about? It's a weird squeal or hum people have been describing it as.
Yeah, where I live is a little too far away in the city to get that, but yes, where the facility actually is, they are having that problem. Yeah.
Oof.
It's great that we're both dealing with different kinds of apocalypses at the same time, whether ours is just Lavos level and yours is just Terminator level. But let's talk about some games because there's one game that came out this week that's pretty cool, and there's another thing that came out a few weeks ago, which I'm pretty excited to talk about. But let's talk about Culdcept Begins. So Culdcept Begins was historically developed by Omniasoft? Yeah.
Omniasoft, yeah.
Omniasoft, okay.
Yeah.
Developed by Omniasoft, and it was this reboot, this is a brand new reboot, Begins, was being developed by the Neos Corporation. Yeah.
Well, so Omniasoft is still involved.
Oh, Omniasoft's still involved. Oh.
Yeah, and actually, Omniasoft has traditionally made these games with another developer because Omniasoft, Culdcept is all they do, at least in the video game space, and so they always need the help of another developer to do a lot of the. I think they do a lot of the art and design work, and then the other developer will do a lot of the programming and help out with that stuff. So traditionally, they've had a few different studios that they've worked with, but this time around, they worked with Grounding, which is a studio people might know because they were founded by the guy who created Panzer Dragoon. But they also make physical board games. Which is part of what make them a really great partner for this game. The board game that Grounding makes is I'm looking it up right now. Sorry, I should have probably pulled this up beforehand, but it's one I think people would know. It's called Machi Koro. It has a blue box. If you've ever been in the board game shop, it has a blue box. It has anime kind of influenced art on the front. But yeah, so they have experience developing video games, but also making board games, which is important because this is basically a digital board game.
Yeah, it's from what I can tell from your review and stuff I've seen online, it's kind of almost like a fantasy Monopoly meets a strategic deck builder kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, the way I describe it in the review is it's like Monopoly meets Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, which is a intriguing mix. Um, in previous games, basically, there was dice roll. It's a board game, effectively, and there were card based battles. And you've had a history with tabletop board games like Monopoly and card games like Yu-Gi-Oh. You mentioned that in your review. I'm curious how these childhood experiences shape your appreciation, shall we say, for this unique digital board game.
Yeah, so I have a lot of fun memories. My family, we used to play Monopoly like all the time when I was a kid. Me and my dad and my stepmom and my grandma. So lots of fun memories, like staying up late and coming back in the morning and finishing the Monopoly game because those games can go on for a very long time. I've always been into like collectible card games, so stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Pokemon, and basically any kind of TCG or TCG related video game. I've probably tried it. I've always really enjoyed those types of games. I think Monopoly is really fun because you're like building up, your kind of properties on the board, but there's always like this dynamic of like risk because at any moment you could land on somebody else's and they could wipe you out or you could wipe them out. There's a lot of deal making to be done in that. And then I really enjoy the kind of deck building aspect of like a TCG where you're kind of looking at all the cards and trying to come up with like combos and cards that'll work well together. And this game really does like combine both of those core ideas into one in a really interesting mix. And it does a lot of things that like would be difficult or wouldn't be possible in a physical board game. And that kind of plays to its strengths as a video game.
I love Monopoly. I absolutely adore Monopoly. So that's cool to hear. Monopoly was my go-to mobile game for like whenever I was traveling anywhere for years on my iPhone 4S. I played so much Monopoly on that thing. I didn't like playing it with actual people because actual people kind of suck at finishing board games.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You got lucky.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm sure that I was the one demanding that we like finish the game, and
you were one of those.
Yeah, and I'm the child, so they kind of had to shut me up and do what I wanted, I guess. But yeah.
What's your history with the series?
Yeah, so I've played all the ones that have come out in the West. So that's Culdcept Second. That originally came out on the Dreamcast, but we got it on the PS2, the expanded version on the PS2, so I played that. Then we got the third game, Culdcept Saga, on the Xbox 360, and I played that. And then we got Culdcept Revolt on the 3DS, which is one of those really late 3DS releases that came out after the Switch had released, and I played that one. And then now Begins. And actually, the first game in the series originally came out for the Sega Saturn and then was later released on the PlayStation 1. That one never got localized, but it is coming out at the end of this month on Steam. And then we'll come to consoles later. So that one is finally getting localized, which is really cool.
Yeah, it also means that you're getting an embarrassment of riches this month when it comes to this series.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a good time to be a Culdcept fan, that's for sure.
Is this a reboot?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a reboot. And I would say, I mean, like most of the games in the series like have an unconnected story. There may be like concepts shared between games, but usually set in a different world.
The Final Fantasy approach.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is the same way, but I think the main way in which, Begins as a reboot is it really changes the visual style and aesthetic, which is something that has generally carried through between games. So, previous games in the Culdcept series, sometimes the cards maybe would get new art or redone art, but it would usually follow like the same theme, and they would have a lot of different artists contribute artwork for the cards. And so there wasn't like a unifying aesthetic between all the cards, right? And that's pretty common for trading card games, right? Like you get a bunch of different artists to do artwork and they may look different from each other, but that's kind of the appeal. And the previous Culdcept games are like that. This game uses a more unified, cohesive art style for all the cards. So it kind of throws out all the old designs for cards that have been kind of maintained throughout the series, and tries a new style. And then that's true for the characters as well, and just the general like world design and area design and everything.
That's cool. I'm trying to I'm trying to think of equivalent games, but it sounds like this thing is rather unique. I'm just top of my head, I'm thinking video games that involve kind of card mechanics like this, or board games. The only thing I can think of are like Mario Party, maybe Slay the Spire for the card game mechanics.
I would say that the closest things to this game would either be Fortune Street, which is a long-running series. We've only ever gotten one in the West, which was the one on the Wii that had like Dragon Quest and Mario characters in it. But there's a lot of releases on a wide variety of platforms in Japan. And that game is pretty similar because it's a digital board game, and you're buying properties and investing in properties and stuff. So it's a lot closer to Monopoly, and so kind of has that element that this game has. And then the other one I would point to is Dokapon. So that's the classic RPG board game, video game, where you like have a RPG character and you level them up, but you travel around a board, and then you and the other players, it's multiplayer, and they're leveling up their characters, and they're trying to defeat you or get to the goal faster than you. But it has a lot of RPG mechanics and like turn-based combat. So it's most similar, I think, to those two games, but is very different because it has the collectible card aspect, which neither of those games have. So
one of the things that you say is that it's it's like a functional localization. It lacks in a lot of personality. I guess I would say workmanlike, perhaps.
Yeah.
What is the plot here?
Yeah, so you play as this boy named Camru, and he is a scepter. So scepters are people who wield the Culd, and Culd are the cards. And so he is at the Royal Scepter Academy, where like fledgling scepters are taught how to hone their skills. And if they, graduate from the academy, then they get to join the Royal Scepter Guard for the Kingdom of Bavrashka, which is the kingdom that controls the entire continent that the game is set on. And so you're following him through his journey through the academy, and then he joins the Royal Scepter Guard, and then he gets embroiled in this conflict that's happening between the kingdom and this like opposing force that's coming out from under the ocean called the Abyss, which is kind of a Lovecraftian, like they all look like octopi and stuff like that. So it has that little bit of Lovecraftian influence with the enemy faction. And he's really looking for his father, who was the general that helped fight the war to unite all of the disparate elemental kingdoms under one banner and for the king of Bavrashka. And his father disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and so part of why he even sets out on this quest is to try and find out what happened to his father. So it's like pretty traditional like RPG storytelling. The school setting is a good way to introduce the mechanics. So most of the matches that you play while you're in the academy are essentially tutorials. But it is a very effective way to convey that information to the player. But it's not a very story-driven game, I would say. Like, you're definitely playing this game for the gameplay mechanics. The story is there. It's functional. It provides enough motivation for, like, why you're going to the different parts around the world and all of that. But it's really just set dressing for the matches themselves.
Before we dive into how to actually play the game, because that seems like it would be useful, I wanted to ask about the visual style, because I've seen images from previous games, and it's pretty, especially like, I know there was a DS remake. Like, it looks very, anime. This takes a very different, it's still anime kind of styles, but very stylized versions of it. They almost look like in the screenshots, it look like paper cutouts almost.
Yeah. They kind of have that like Paper Mario look to them a little bit. Like,
it's a very distinctive
sprites.
style.
Yeah, 2D like artwork, and they move around kind of like paper characters would or whatever. Which is, it is very distinct. I think what works for that is that there's always been kind of a separation between how the card art looks and like maybe the backgrounds of areas and things like that look in previous Culdcept games, and then how they're actually represented in the world and like on the board, where your character would be represented as this like really like squat kind of sprite, right? Like as typical in like older, RPGs. And then when that's also how all the monsters were represented when they would appear on the board. But then you look at the card art and the monster and like the monster sprite, and they like definitely don't match very clearly. And so what this art style allows them to do is like the characters match what the monsters on the cards kind of look like. They all kind of follow the same art style. And then when the monsters actually appear on the field, they look almost exactly like how they appear on the cards. So it's more cohesive, but it is kind of like cartoony and more chibi than previous games art has looked. So I know that's probably it's a big shift. So I think a lot of longtime fans maybe aren't super happy with the art style, but what I think it does is it creates a more cohesive feel to the aesthetic. And I think that makes it easier for people to get into. And also the visual language is a lot clearer. So when you look at a card and then you look at the board, you know immediately from looking at the picture on the card what monster is on the board. Whereas in the previous games, that was a lot less clear. So there are some advantages to having that unified art style for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I really like the art style. And you're right, it is a little bit more, well, it's funny, later in the episode, we're going to be talking about a series that is very familiar with the idea of moving to a more cartoony art style and some fans being pissy about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to play the darn thing.
Yeah.
So basically, it's at its core, it's a little bit like Monopoly. Players travel aboard to acquire and develop properties.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, it is at its basic level, it is Monopoly, right? So you're traveling on the board. You start at the castle. The castle is basically go on the Monopoly board, and then when you make an entire lap around the board and go back to the castle, it's just like when you pass go and get $200, you get an increasing amount of money for completing a lap. And then every lap you do, that a number of money that you get for doing the lap increases. And that's your main way of getting revenue to then invest in the properties. So every single spot on the board is a tile that you can essentially claim, and then you can invest money into to increase the amount of rent or toll that you would charge another player who lands on that. So that is all like basically just Monopoly, right?
Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
Yes, but how it differs is actually how you like buy and claim and then interact with tiles and other players. So that is all done through the trading card game layer. So when you want to claim a space, you actually have to play a monster card on that space, and then the monster inhabits that space. And the monster has an attack and HP value, very similar to how cards in Magic the Gathering have that, right? And that is like consistent. So, let's say your monster, you place a monster down on a tile and it has 40 attack and 40 HP. Well, if it fights a battle with another player's monster and it takes 20 damage, then it maintains that 20 HP left as long as it's on the board, unless you can heal it or complete a lap and they get healed when you complete a lap and stuff like that. So there is some kind of like permanency to the cards that you're playing on the board. And playing cards, playing monster cards is also how you would deal with landing on a tile that one of your opponents owns. So in Monopoly, if you land on a property that your opponent owns, well, you just have to pay the rent, right? There's no way to get out of it. But in Culdcept, their monster card is housed there. And so you can battle their monster card with one of your own. And if your monster card is victorious, then you actually take ownership of that land from the other player. And not only do you not have to pay the toll, but you get their property. And so the main goal of each match is that there's a certain arbitrary value that you're trying to hit of gold. And that's represented by the money that you accrue from tolls and from, completing laps. But it's also the value of the properties that you own. So investing in the properties and raising their level so that you can charge more tolls also brings you up to that goal that you're trying to hit. And then once you hit that goal, then you want to complete a lap. So what that means is that by the end of a match, when a lot of players are getting really close to that goal, that's where it becomes really dynamic. Because if you're trying to complete the last lap around the board and you have enough gold to get you over that threshold, and then you land on somebody else's spot and then lose the battle and they take a toll from you, that kicks you down, right? And you all of a sudden you don't have enough property or value to meet that threshold, and now you lose. You can't win when you complete the lap, and that allows like an opponent maybe to pass you, lap you, and then win. So basically, up until the end of the match, there's always a lot of dynamism, and people can kind of come back from behind and win if they play smartly.
I don't think that rich Uncle Pennybags would cut it in this world. I think he'd be dead in the first, he wouldn't even get around to the jail. He'd be dead in the first side of the board. Yeah, it sounds like a very smart spin on the traditional Monopoly method, because that is considered to be, I really like Monopoly, but it is considered to be fairly slow, especially after players start capturing every space on the board.
Yes.
At which point it's just the game kind of stops, and at that point it's just a matter of bleeding the other players dry. But this adds a whole new dimension to it, which is, of course, why we're covering it. Yeah,
and a lot of people, kind of think of Monopoly as a very luck-based game. There is obviously some strategy and planning to it, but a lot of it relies on luck, and that's kind of what the TCG aspect of the game does in Culdcept, is that it makes it a lot more strategic, because you're going into every match with a deck crafted around a particular strategy, and your opponents are all doing that as well. So you're trying to execute your strategy based on your deck. They're trying to execute their strategy, and then you're trying to, hamper their strategy, and they are doing that to you with the cards that you have in play. So you actually have a lot of agency over what happens in a match, which is not really true of Monopoly. You're kind of a slave to the dice rolls, right? And there's a lot of cards that allow you to manipulate the number, what is rolled on the die, or manipulate players' hands, or manipulate the board itself. So there's a lot of ways for you to actually have interaction beyond just rolling and hoping that you don't land on a bad space, right? And that's what keeps it engaging and fresh and fun over multiple matches in a way that Monopoly doesn't quite get to. And something it would be really hard to do in a physical board game, but is a lot easier to understand and manage in a digital board game.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Whereas what you describe, it sounds certainly quite a bit more complex. But at what point does this have to be a video game? It could not possibly be a board game.
Yeah, I think that is largely the pace, and then maintaining the state of the board, right? Because a lot of these matches, so you'll have a board, the board maybe has 30 to 50 spaces on it, and then you have 4 separate players. So, just think about how much of a headache it would be to maintain who has what monster on what tile for 50 different tiles for 4 different players. That is really hard to keep track of, and the game does all of that for you. And so and that's a major way in which it kind of solves that problem. What I will say, though, something that's interesting about this game, and another way that it's digital, not a physical board game, is that every player's hand is visible to the rest of the players at all times. So that makes it pretty different from other trading card games, but also other board games. You always know what your opponent has, and they always know what you have on hand. And so when it shifts to the other player's turn, you're getting a full view of their hand and what they're doing on the board when they're doing it. And so I think just easily being able to show you what the player has on hand right at that time is another way that takes advantage of being digital rather than a physical board game.
Yeah, and another way I would imagine is the shape and size of the board would be kind of, you get stuck into one board in a real board game, whereas they're not just standard squares. It's not a square board. It's not Monopoly where you're going side, 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 side.
Yeah, that's correct. Some of the early matches are done on pretty square boards, but they very quickly shift to really different board layouts. So some board layouts have like switchbacks where you have to go up a row and then like that just goes out to a dead end and you have to go back. So those are interesting because there's like double the chances to land on one of those tiles. So that makes them more valuable to own because it's way more likely someone's going to land on them and have to pay a toll if you have it. There's also structures on the board. So Monopoly has this a little bit with like jail or whatever, right? Or the spots that you land on and you pull a card or whatever, right? But Culdcept takes that idea and massively expands it. So you have structures like a shop where you can buy cards that are kind of a random assortment of cards that you can only use during that match. But that is a way to give you like extra cards beyond the 40 card limit in your deck. And things that you didn't necessarily build into your deck for the match, but could change the tide of the match because all of a sudden you have access to cards you didn't bring in. There's also a structure called the Sanctuary, which is very interesting because that one, so every tile on the board has an elemental, one of 4 elements associated with it, and that corresponds to its color. So you fire, water, wind, or air, and earth, right? And because of that, you also, all the monsters fall into one of those 4 elemental categories. So placing a monster that corresponds to the tiles element makes that monster stronger and harder to defeat if somebody lands on it. But the sanctuaries also have, it's a place you can buy tokens. And so these tokens are also one of the 4 elements. And the value of the token starts at like 10 gold per token. And as you acquire and then invest into lands of a particular element, the value of the token rises with the level of investment in that element. And that means that what you want to do is you want to go to the sanctuary early in a match, and your strategy may revolve around a certain element. So then you want to buy a bunch of tokens of that element. And then when you come back later in the match, after you've developed those lands of that element, you can go into the sanctuary and then sell the tokens because their value is now increased like tenfold from all the work you've put into those elements. And then you can make a bunch of money all at once. And any player can do that. So there's a lot of like, it's like you're investing basically in stocks, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a level of like strategy and planning that Monopoly doesn't allow, but this game does allow through adding some additional complexity there.
Well, I would say in Monopoly, the only thing that actually adds any amount of complexity is, realistically speaking, chance and community chest, because, they have weird effects on the game. They have weird effects on the money. Is there an equivalency of that here? With I remember reading that you have there's shops, obviously, fortune tellers, shrines, sanctuaries, things like that.
Yeah, so the shrines are this where you land on the spot, and then like a random effect happens that affects like the entire board, and you don't get to choose it. So that's pretty similar to like landing on like community chests and pulling a card that has some kind of effect. And that can affect you as the player that landed on it, and it can affect one of your opponents, and it can be a positive or a negative effect. So that adds a lot of like dynamism to the matches because you never really know what's going to happen when somebody lands on one of those.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, the progression system is done through purchasing card packs between matches. So every time you finish a match, you're awarded with a certain amount of gold that you can then use to buy random packs of cards, just like you would like a booster pack for a TCG, right? And you don't really know what those cards are going to be. And then also on winning a match, you get a certain assortment of cards that you get for winning that match as a reward. And so this is where the RPG elements come in, basically, is like that's your progression across matches, because every match, you start at 0, but you have the deck that you've built and you bring in. And so after you do every match, you're winning more cards so you can build more complex decks, right? And so that's how they maintain that kind of progression, RPG style progression across the entire game, is by giving you access to more cards.
Okay. We have the decks, and obviously you customize your decks. This game, because it is a board game, and it does feature a single-player campaign, to be clear. I think you mentioned it's about 20 hours. But yes. I imagine the long-term enjoyment of the game is multiplayer, so you can play it with others. Given that you can use any deck created by the host during local multiplayer, how does this make like more complex mechanics more accessible with playing with friends? Like, do you think? Actually, no. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah. I think the main appeal of this game beyond the campaign, like you said, it's about 20 hours long, so it's pretty meaty. Is doing matches online, right? So the online multiplayer is like really where I think the game gets the most of its like long-term enjoyment. And the good thing about this game coming out late in the Switch's life, but early in the Switch 2's life, is that it actually has a bit of a chance to like have an online multiplayer community. The past few games were either too obscure or like Revolt was released so late in the 3DS's life, like most people had moved on. So like it didn't ever really have that dedicated community. But you do have the option of local multiplayer. So previous games in the series had local, like the PS2 game, for example, had like hot seat multiplayer where you just pass the controller back and forth. So when it's the other player's turn, they get the controller and then vice versa. But because the Switch has game share, you can actually, if somebody else has a Switch but they don't have the game, you can game share the game with them. And then you can each play on your own screen, which is a much better experience than it has been previously, the local multiplayer. So you can get a lot of mileage out of that too. And then it's also, I would compare it to like Advance Wars, where a lot of the appeal in Advance Wars is, doing skirmishes against the AI that are separate from the campaign, and also like kind of doing matches with your own parameters. And this game also allows for that, right? So you can play against the AI with different kinds of decks and different rule sets and everything, separate from the main campaign, and you get to set all of that yourself. So there's a wide variety of different modes to play in, and I think that's kind of what gives it longevity past that 20-hour story mark, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our board games that generally, when you think of a board game, you think Monopoly, Clue, things like that. And these board games are, functionally speaking, I mean, Monopoly is almost 100 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm looking at the board here from 1935, and it is identical. Like, if you didn't know any better and you put a Monopoly board from 1935 in front of somebody, if it looked mint condition, they wouldn't know they're playing an old version of the game. All the properties are all the same. Everything's identical. Whereas games like this evolve constantly through their, through each iteration of the game.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of this one, do you think it advances the formula of the, board game, or did you prefer previous versions more?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Jono. I think that there are some ways in which this game is definitely a step down from previous games. So like, for example, Culdcept Saga had a really interesting storyline where you actually started out as a young man that was sold into slavery, and then you work your way up through the storyline to like being in like the royal court, and then eventually like become a god, which is just like a really interesting narrative trajectory that this game's story is just much more conventional than that. Similarly, like Revolt, which was the one on 3DS, you were like join like a rebel group in this like city, and you're trying to, where the leader of the city is trying to crack down on anybody who's a scepter, and so you're kind of like fighting against them and running around. And so those were like more interesting narrative contexts than what this game provides. But I would say that I think this game is the UI and like the way the rules and mechanics are conveyed to the player. I think it's the most clear and the best job they've done with that thus far. So a lot of, the previous Culdcept games, they don't have a lot of tutorialization, but they also don't explain a lot of mechanics very clearly. And this game, it's very easy to see at a glance, like, this is how much my properties are all worth. This is how much my opponents are worth. If they move here, like this will happen. It's just all a lot more clear, and it just does a much better job of conveying that information to the player. So that's, I think, the main evolution that it does. Most of the mechanics are pretty similar, but they also increase the pace of the game a lot. So you can speed up actions for yourself and the AI. So the older games have a problem of like matches can last like 1 to 2 hours at a time. And in this game, they're usually like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. So that is very helpful.
I am intrigued by this game. I'm someone who likes board games and who doesn't play enough of them because I don't have people to play them with. And that's one of the reasons I like digital board games so much. It's like I can play by myself. I don't need anybody else. This sounds like a lot of fun. The whole series sounds like a lot of fun. And I mean, this is probably not the last. We're going to be hearing more about this series soon, I would imagine, on RPG Fan. And I look forward to hearing your take when that happens.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be cool to be able to compare like this newest iteration to like the very first game in the series and see what's kind of changed and what each one did better. So I think it's a very cool time to be a fan of these kind of quirky offbeat games because there's much more of a market for them now than there ever has been before, I think. And I think people really... Especially, you mentioned like the kind of roguelike deck builders earlier. And I think that's really kind of gotten people into these card-based mechanics. And even though this game isn't really structured like one of those, if you like other kind of card-based RPGs, I think you could really get into this. And people are just more open-minded about those kind of games now. So it's a good opportunity for people to dive in.
Cool. Okay, we're going to move on now to something that really we shouldn't be covering, but we're covering it for a very specific reason. It makes sense. We have a host of Retro Encounter here, so we can get away with it. Is it okay with you, Aleks?
I mean, I'm always happy to talk about retro games.
So what we have here is Dusklight, and in parentheses, I guess, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. So usually I have to go through, when I talk about games and I make my notes and everything, I usually, painstakingly go through various sources to put together things. In this particular case, I don't need to because I know the story by heart, and that is Space World 2000. Nintendo showcased a very, very impressive tech demo of a sword fight between Link and Ganondorf to show off the processing power of the GameCube. And this said, oh God, people were very, very excited. And then they got the Wind Waker, and fans lost their freaking minds about this because it's a cartoon, it looks terrible, blah, blah. Well, we all know how that turned out. Wind Waker is considered to be one of the best games in the series, and it's also probably the one that aged the best. But in response to that, I guess Nintendo was like, fine, we'll give you what you want. And they did. They gave us Twilight Princess, which is the closest thing, I guess you could say, to a full-on successor. I guess, Aleks, in your review, you mentioned some people derisively call it Ocarina of Time 2.
Derisively or in praise. Like some people just wanted an Ocarina of Time too, and this is certainly the closest Nintendo has gotten to it.
Yeah, really cool release story about this game in that it was going to be an exclusive release for the GameCube, but then the Wii was going to be released, and they're like, let's do a dual launch. However, because Wii motion controls were going to be, they were going to be integrated somewhat into the game. And most people are right-handed, Link suddenly became right-handed in the Wii version of the game. In the GameCube version of the game, he's left-handed. How to do this? They mirrored the entire game, which is such a ridiculously cool thing and really created an interesting variety of different versions of this to play. Anyway, it's one of the only ones that we don't have a current HD re-release for. Thankfully, fans stepped in, as fans often do, and they created this. It's an exe file. It's Windows native, and it is astonishing. It is absolutely incredible, in my opinion, that there is now a PC version of Twilight Princess called Dusklight. And Aleks, you have played it.
I have, and I had a really good time with it. It's honestly I've played a bit of decompilations, recompilations before. There's a bit of a distinction there, but just like this one, I was so impressed the way because for a decompilation, it's basically completely reverse engineered, painstakingly rebuilt code that needs to be done by very skilled programmers. So this was a multi-year process that involved really getting into the weeds of how this game worked and rebuilding the code. But because with the decompilation, all the code is, rebuilt from scratch, the developers understand how it works. So they're also able to modify different aspects of the games a lot more easily. So the way that the new Dusklight menu appears when you just simply launch it as an exe file on your computer, the way it pops up, the way the settings menu, you could either like engage with it in the Dusklight menu or bring it up like during play. Like the UI looks like cleanly and well integrated into like the general aesthetics of Twilight Princess. So you have all these toggles and you can play around with the way the game looks, the way the game runs. You can enable cheats, all these other different little modifications. It's incredible how easy it is. I just want to like stress that first and foremost, because I know like some people can be like scared of these kinds of efforts. Like getting into like hacking practices and all that. Like there's a lot of sometimes difficult like PC things interactions to do there.
Have to compile it or something like that.
Yeah, but this is just so easy to do, and it's like so easy to manipulate the settings. So like if you're interested in playing Twilight Princess and there you have like no means to do so, because like you said, it's the only mainline Zelda that's not readily available to play on Switch. This is an excellent way to do it, and it runs brilliantly. It looks better than the game ever has also.
And there's a number of reasons why that's the case. Like you said, there are a lot of customization options, and like you said, graphics are some of them. You can change the bloom, you can change many things. There are a lot of HD texture packs out there that are I think there's one that's based on the GameCube version, and there's another one that's based on the re-release that came out a few years later.
Yeah, the Wii U,
the Wii U
HD,
version.
Remaster. Yeah, so and you can just like grab these texture packs, and then the decomp will just like there's a setting in the menu, you'll just easily be able to like pull it, apply it to the game, and boom, you're playing like an even like more revamped kind of visual upgrade to the game.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest things about this is, unlike a lot of, I mean, let's be completely honest. In any other scenario, Nintendo would be on this hard. This is Twilight Princess on the PC, and they aren't getting a cent. But there's an interesting way that they're getting around it, in that when you download Dusklight, the game isn't there. All you're getting is the EXE and like basically the infrastructure for it. You need to provide your own ROM, and that could either be your own copy of the GameCube or Wii game, or you can find it in other ways. But the point is that this file, there's nothing in it. Nintendo can't get them to take it down because there's no intellectual property there.
Yeah, the code completely belongs to these developers who painstakingly rebuilt it. So it's their intellectual property. And then, the ROM you can just rip from your copy of the game or whatever other means you have. And boom, you're playing Twilight Princess.
So cool. You played through this. What was your experience with Twilight Princess in the past?
So I played Twilight Princess, I remember immediately when it came out, which is honestly a bit of a rarity for me, but I was really excited for the game. I picked it up on GameCube because I A, didn't have a Wii yet, but B, also wasn't really interested in wagging my hand around to swing the sword. So I never ended
wagging your hands around in those days.
Yeah. So I played.
Jesus Christ! Okay,
phrasing, Jono.
Phrasing. We were all teenagers and in our 20s. So much hand. God.
Yeah, but I was basically the perfect age for when Twilight Princess came out. I was like 12 or 13 years old, and so that it was one of my first T for teen games, I think. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is so cool, so dark. I get to turn into a wolf. Oh man. It just fit that mid 2000s Hot Topic era so well. You get to turn into a hot Link wolf furry with wearing a prison shackle as your anklet. It's so cool. But it was just perfect for me at that time, and I had a really really fun experience with the game. Even though in later years, I know the discourse around Twilight Princess got a little more critical about the game having too much padding and things like that, and I just never went back to Twilight Princess because I only had access to it on a GameCube. I didn't have a CRT anymore, so I just never got back to the game. But I could say revisiting the game now for the first time since it came out, this game is really good. I even enjoy some of the things that people are more critical about. I think the Twilight Realm segments where you play as the wolf, and maybe this was also partly due to the changes in the the PC port. But I thought it was like really like just had like great atmosphere to the game, like some really interesting aspects of like being in this like parallel side of the world where like you're seeing like the suffering of like the world a little bit more. I thought that was actually really well done. And then just like there's a lot of like gameplay variety and kind of like the in between segments of the game, like when you're not just going from overworld part to dungeon to dungeon. There's also these like narratively contextualized little segments, like you're on your horse and you need to protect like a carriage of like NPCs from like these goblin invaders and things like that. There's one time where you like kind of march into this like ghost town, like a cowboy, and you have to like take out like all these different goblins all around the place, just like using your bow and arrow for the most part. I like all these like little gameplay varieties because the game is quite long. Other than like the most recent Zelda games, it is the most like lengthy in terms of like that original kind of Zelda formula. But I think it earned it with a lot of kind of creative design choices and just an amazing run of dungeons as well.
I mean, that's really where where the game does shine. It is a exceptional example of a 3D Zelda experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was ready to be a little bit more critical of it, but I ended up even more positive than I imagined. And like I said before, I think part of that was due to just 60 frames per second, or I even maybe got it to like 120, and just like all the different conveniences. Because like, man, this quality of life menu you have, like you can enable, like again, this is pulled from the original GameCube version. But you can enable quality of life things that were introduced in the HD version, like having larger wallet sizes to carry more rupees, no kind of like rupee reminders when you like load the game again and you pick up a new rupee. It doesn't remind you how much it's worth, because that sure was a thing back in the day. And also like you can enable the hero mode settings, which I played with. So having like no recovery hearts in the wild, so you have to depend more on your empty bottles and potions and stuff like that. Also double enemy damage, which made me appreciate just like how many like more combat mechanics they added into this game, which wasn't necessary at all in the original because of how easy it was. But by upping the difficulty a bit, I found myself, being a little bit more experimental. There was full 3D camera movement. The original only had like camera movement that operated on the X-axis, but now you can enable full 3D seamless camera movement, which led to like an occasional hiccup where I get stuck on like a wall or something, but it wasn't anything serious at all. It was just like minor little things of just like, okay, this is just a quirk from this not being part of the original game. I had full gyro control for like bow and arrow aiming and all of that, just using my Switch Pro controller. One of my favorites was modification to the spinner item, which I thought was one of the coolest new items introduced in Twilight Princess. It's basically like a Beyblade that you ride around on, which was a little bit underused in the original game. But now you can enable a setting where you can speed it up, accelerate it by just holding down R. And so I was just ripping through, Hyrule Field on my spinner, just like jump attacking enemies. It was a great time. So all these little like differences, I think, plus just the way the game ran, like really made me appreciate the experience even more.
Yeah, I find that very funny because I feel like this would be suddenly it becomes like the prototype for the Master Cycle Zero from Breath of the Wild. Link's Motorcycle.
Yeah, true.
I think the game looks beautiful. I really do, and it actually looks beautiful even without the texture packs. But one of the things that always amuses me about older games like this is you can update the textures, and even without the upgrades, it still looks great. They still didn't quite figure out character models yet. So like this Link in particular looks like his tunic is a little bit too starched. He has a little bit too much starch in his shirt, basically. But you get over that quick. I mean, it's just you fall back into the period that this game was made, and it, unlike a lot of older games, by this point in time, they knew how to make a Zelda game. So like, yeah, and you can play it just as it is, or you can jump into the quality of life features and customize the game however you want. And that's so cool.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
I love it. I just love it. And we're going to pivot this actually into our discussion question for today, because the last couple of months have been, just in 2026, it's been kind of crazy for decomps. Like, so many of them are coming out. And there have been a few over the years, like there's a Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time decomp, and these have been out there, and human teams have spent literally, I can't even imagine how many hours building these things painstakingly. And this is my research. I think it's right. I hope it's right. Back in May of 2024, a dev called Mr. Wise Guy solved a decades-old technical bottleneck regarding dynamic memory jumps and open-sourced N64 recomp. This proved that an entire game's binary could be recompiled into native C code in seconds rather than years. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like it is very, very useful. And it turns out it was, because people could take that as a basis, that he made it open source, and adapt it for a variety of other systems. And then on top of that, I can't stand it, but in this particular case, you can't avoid it. AI coding tools really, really help with this, because AI coding tools could very, very quickly build very complex backend software. And by doing this, it's really, we're starting to get these games that really shouldn't be out on PC, but are. And oh my God, some of them are just crazy. Like, I know that Pikmin has a one that just released a little while ago. I know Symphony of the Night has actually two versions that are coming out. They're doing the Xbox 360 version and, of course, the PlayStation version. Banjo-Kazooie is there. Gears of War 2 now has a Windows version. Mario Kart Wii, a bunch of Mega Man X games, Silent Hill, Donkey Kong 64. I actually might play Donkey Kong 64 for the first time. It's nuts. These things are coming out so rapidly. And that's really, really exciting. But I wanted to get both of your thoughts about this. Like, obviously AI sucks. We know it sucks. We actually had a bit of a conversation. We had the conversation earlier about the AI data centers. But what are your takes on this? Why do you think this is happening now, and how do you think this is going to continue to develop in the future?
So I will just say one minor correction, just that
Please do.
Decompilations and recompilations are like a little bit different, because decompilations are just done from scratch, like painstaking process. What you're just quoting from has more to do with recompilations, which is a more like automated process that uses tooling to automate things further. And so it translates the binary of the game. So like the developers don't actually have access in that case to the actual code and understanding how it works. So it's a little less modifiable. But it is easier to do as long as the tool exists for that system. So I think the main recomp tools right now are N64 recomp, and there's an Xbox 360 one that's called Rexglue, I think. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of new titles suddenly being done with just like the help that AI provides as well for these processes. Most of these games are from N64 or Xbox 360, because the decompilation just is always going to be like a more extensive process, unless AI is also really making that a lot easier. I haven't looked into that.
I was just going to say the 360 one's really interesting, because with that, you're actually seeing them port games that were not originally on the 360 to the 360. There's a bunch of like arcade ports of like Ridge Racer game, like arcade exclusive Ridge Racer games and other like Namco arcade games getting ported to the 360 that never originally released on the platform. And then people are playing them in 360 emulators, which is just like a very interesting development to like. So it's not even just playing games from a particular console platform on PC, but it's also like taking games from other platforms and then putting them onto platforms they weren't on originally. So there's a lot of like potential there, I think, for some interesting stuff. Not a lot of RPG related things yet, but I'm sure that could happen.
Although Ben, I don't know if you heard, but I think two of the major recomps they're starting to work on now are Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey.
Oh my God.
Well, and I don't know if you guys heard, this is actually just really recent, that Microsoft announced that the Xbox One or original Xbox backwards compatibility is coming to PC, and people have started to dig into the files of the emulator wrapper that they're using for those, and it turns out it's literally just like the 360 emulator thing that they use on Xbox One. So it's very likely that people are going to like take that and use it to just port games from the 360 to the PC. So I would not be surprised if we are very close to Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey on PC, either from Microsoft themselves officially or from the community.
Do they have anyone left over there that could actually do the work?
I know that's the downside. I guess the platform engineers weren't as heavily hit as the development studios from all the layoffs. So yeah.
Well, we'll see. The thing about AI is, I think there's a bit of confusion, not among YouTube, but like in general. I've seen a lot of discourse about it online about how AI is being used to make these games, and it's not. Like AI doesn't work like that. You can't just tell AI, you can't point AI at, I don't know, Donkey Kong 64 and say, figure this out. AI is exceptionally good at writing code, but that code is not exact. It's not. It has a lot of license for mistakes, changes. It's never the same twice, which is kind of a problem when you're trying to work on a game that needs to be. You can't take dramatic license when you're doing this kind of work. So the reality is the work is still in the hands of humans, but the tools that the humans can use are probably being developed in part with AI.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion for people. A lot of like the negative reaction to AI that I share is like the creation of like visual assets, music, basically creative processes through AI, right? And like generate either language learning models for text or image generation models for visual stuff, and that is, I think, a very different thing than like what these tools are doing, which is just like using it to like automate code and the processing power of like the AI model and the data centers to like run a bunch of code, a ton calculations, like a lot of them at once, right? That would be difficult for you to do on your own hardware or whatever. So I think that it's important to make a distinction between those two things, right? Like the one use of AI is like replacing what would be human creative work with like slop. And this is just another tool, just like any other computational tool that people use. I do wonder, though, because I think we're rapidly approaching the point where these AI models, they're not providing a return on investment for the companies, and these companies are buoyed by like millions or billions of dollars in investment. That's not really panning out in like actual revenue and profit. So I do wonder if some of that's going to slow down when people no longer have access to these tools because they either have to put them behind like some sort of paywall or shut them down entirely because they're not making money.
Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah. But at least right now, like if we can get some good use out of them.
If we can get Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page as you, Alex. I think I said this on a random a while ago, but I remember these bloody companies are just like pushing AI because they want to be AI first. And I remember they were talking about the AI algorithm they were using for Aloy's hair in the Horizon games. And I'm like, that's not what we're talking about when AI is being, it's technically our AI, but it's not like a chatbot. It's not like something that is creating, I don't think they've stolen Aloy's hair. Let me put it that way. It's a dev tool.
There's also there's a big push to rebrand already existing tools that don't actually really use generative AI models as AI, because that's a way to get investors to support your product. So you are seeing a lot of products being called AI that have been in existence for a long time that actually aren't AI. I have a good example, actually. There's a new game in the Hot Shots Golf series came out last year. And on the Steam page, they said that it was using generative AI for some assets, and people were really upset about this. But then when it turned out is they were just using the tool Speed Tree. And speed tree is something that's been used in games since like 2005, right? Like it's just a thing that takes an asset that you make and then just algorithmically distributes the asset throughout the game world and is not really generative AI at all. And so because SpeedTree has started to market their tool as AI, even though it's not, then it got wrapped up in that. So, and like, I understand why businesses are doing that, obviously, because it's a way to like get investment, but it's also contributing some to the confusion around AI because like those tools don't use the data centers to like generate, these outputs, right? Like it's not AI really, but everybody wants to call their thing AI so that they can get money in.
I still maintain that AI, LLMs, etc. It's a world-changing technology being used in the utterly stupidest ways possible.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to the destruction, I guess, of all of our society. God help us when that bubble pops, if it pops. I don't want the bubble to pop. I know that there's a certain feeling inside where you're like, yeah, I want that I want that bubble to pop. I want it to, explode because you hate it so much. But like realistically speaking, so much of the economy is built on this damn stuff now. If the bubble pops, that's going to be bad. That's going to be bad for everybody. I don't want it to pop. I don't want it to continue to grow. But I would be happy with a gradual deflation. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, I don't think this technology is fully going away, but I think that the uses that we're seeing now, I think most of those uses are going to go away because they're not really leading to like a profitable outcome, right? And so if you can't generate profit out of it, then it's not going to stick around in our system for very long. And so I think a lot of the worst aspects of it are going to fundamentally be proven to be unprofitable and die off.
Which would be just perfect.
Yeah. But that's maybe, I don't know, that's optimistic. So maybe not.
We're going to be seeing a lot less buggy software because if there's one thing this thing is good at, it's spotting bugs. It's really quite amazing, apparently, at it. I want to ask one last question to both of you before we head off. And this is something that I've been thinking about because I'm really excited about this. Oh my God, like executable versions of these games on PC. That's amazing. And then I was like, there's literally no reason why I could not have just downloaded an emulator and played a version of Twilight Princess that would be functionally identical to what this Dusklight is at any point. Yes, it may not have had the built-in quality of life features, but those features could be available with mods. Why is this so different than emulation?
I mean, for one, it is the fact that it runs natively, right? It's simply not emulation. It's like it is a PC port by like every definition of the word, and so just from there, like you don't like the developers have more control over like what the experience the user is getting out of it. Emulation has all these like kinks. I mean, if you ever have tried to play games on an emulator, it's usually not as simple as just downloading the thing, running it, and getting in the game.
Especially a PlayStation 3 emulator. Ugh.
Yeah, and I mean, like also like you're just not going to get it running or looking as nicely like a emulated version of Twilight Princess as Dusklight is because of how much care the developers have put into rebuilding it and redoing the visuals and all of that. So it's really better in every way.
Yeah, and you're not limited. You're not limited by the constraints of the hardware, or in the original code and the platform that it was on when you're doing one of these kind of recomps, as opposed to like emulators can obviously run games at higher resolutions. You can run games at like a faster speed, whatever, what have you, but you're still limited entirely by like the code of the original game, or going in and hacking the code of the game, which is quite difficult to do and requires a lot of expertise to do. And then if you want that to be like recognizable or playable on original hardware outside of an emulator, then that you have to more fit the limitations of that platform, right? So this is a thing like with the ROM hacking scene, right? And ROM hacking's been a thing for a very long time, but ROM hacking has a lot of limitations, right? Technical limitations, based on the base code of the game, and like it's hard to put in things that don't already exist within that framework. Whereas
folks go into these games and basically they hack together development kits using the bones of this game. Final Fantasy IV, I'm playing a hack right now called Unprecedented Crisis, which is so cool. It's a what if game if Leviathan didn't swallow the ship, and they make it to anyway, I'm quite enjoying it. Sorry, I haven't heard of
that
there.
one. I'm gonna look into that.
But that's and I think ROM hacks are great. I mean, I love ROM hacks, and I think we've talked about this before, Jono, and it's come up before on Random, I think. But it is a very difficult process, and it's a lot of communities have developed tools. Like I'm very familiar with like the Fire Emblem ROM hacking community, and there's some very good tool sets to help people who want to do ROM hacking now. But it took a really long time for those to build up. And I think the benefit of some of these like recomps, other than the fact that they're running natively, is that it's a lot easier to put in new code and new elements and things like that. It just allows you to have a lot more control over that experience and people to build on that experience in a way that like you're not beholden to the same limitations as emulation or like ROM hacking or editing the ISO file or what have you.
Hell with it. I'm going to ask you one more question just because it's a fun one. This is a simple one. Let's say any system before the PS4 era, so PlayStation 3, Wii, Xbox 360, anything there and below, you can pick one game that gets a native version for Windows. What would it be?
It's a tough one, Jono.
I know.
Just RPGs or like any game? Any
game, but if you want to put preference to RPGs, you can.
I think I would really like a version of Vagrant Story.
Oh,
that runs really well.
Good pick.
Yeah.
That's a real good pick.
Yeah, that is good. That is good, Alex. I think part of what has made the fervor around these like recomps so big, particularly for like N64, is that N64 emulation has always been kind of a compromised experience and really difficult. So I think what I'd really want is another platform that kind of has those problems. And so the Dreamcast, while the emulation scene for that is better than N64, it still has some kind of issues and isn't like perfect. So I would want to see like more Dreamcast decomps and recomps. And I mean, as for a game on that system, I mean, I don't know. I guess Grandia 2 is probably my favorite game on the Dreamcast, and it does have like a PC port, but I don't think the HD remaster isn't the best. So I think fans could do a lot better than that official release.
Yeah, I think Vagrant Story for performance and especially quality of life additions, I think would just smoothen the experience there so much. But kind of building off what you said, Ben, and this is Saturn rather than Dreamcast, but like same issues with emulation apply. Mm-hmm. Panzer Dragoon Saga, baby.
Saga, yeah.
That'd be a great one. I'm surprised that doesn't exist yet, actually.
I am too. Shining Force 3 be an interesting choice as well, because we only got like one of them.
And those are fan translated as well, the other parts. So,
right.
Yeah.
For me, it's not even a question. It's 3D Dot Game Heroes. I've wanted to play it for years and years and years and have not been able to because the state of PlayStation 3 emulation is actually not terrible, but that particular game, for whatever reason, is very tricky. I started it and it's frozen. Eventually, I'm just like, I'm not going to even try it until I get something that is like rock solid because it is such a cool looking game, and I've always wanted to play it beginning to end. I could really go for that. That'd be a good time. Anyway, you know what else is a good time? Buying stuff at our store. You can support us here at RPG Fan by, visiting the shop. You can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. Another way you can support us is to check out all of our podcasts. You can check out past episodes of Random Encounter. Last week we talked about Grand Blue Fantasy Relink's new DLC, Endless Ragnarok, and the newest entry in the Sword Art Online series, Echoes of Aincrad. Another thing we have is the Retro Encounter podcast. And boy, it's kind of fun that we got to talk about Dusklight today because, well, tell the folks what last week's Retro was about, Aleks.
It was a Legend of Zelda tier list ranking. So Ben was there. We had a lot of fun, and there was some drama, but ultimately, I think all of us came out of it still liking each other. So highly recommend that episode.
Did you come out of it liking all of the games, though?
There's a couple. The D tier ones. There's less kind things to say about some of the ones that end up there. Even though one of them I have quite a soft spot for.
Tier lists are always rather contentious, but they're so much fun. Another thing you could check out is Random Encounter, which is still on hiatus, but with almost 200 episodes released, you can listen to it at any point and get some absolutely wonderful RPG music. So check that out. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can fire me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. I would love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future episodes, discussion questions, anything like that, fire me off a message. If you'd like to send me an email directly, you can do so at my email, jlogan@rpgfan.com, and you can also find me at johnalogan.bluesky.social. Ben, where can we find you online?
Yeah, you can email me at benloganlove@gmail.com.
Love that name. And Aleks?
You can email me at alexfranacek@gmail.com.
Love that name too, but it's missing something in the middle there. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends to help us get the word out there, and you can rate us on iTunes or your other podcast player of choice. Ben, Aleks, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your thoughts about finally a little bit of good news. Of course, it has nothing to do with the actual video game industry, but it's delightful news anyway. And frankly speaking, I could use some delightful video game news right now.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Anytime at all. And to everyone out there, whatever you're playing, have fun.